And we're back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about the 4 corporations that entirely control the luxury industry. Now, whether it's watches, which by the way, that's what we talk about here primarily if you're new to the channel, watches, vintage watches, other things thrown in, or whether it's other luxury goods, even alcohol, leather, goods, services. These 4 corporations are doing it all. They're controlling your pocketbook if you're into luxury or the finer things, and we need to talk about it because it is eye-opening for those of you that are not familiar. Also, check out delraywatch.com. We've got so many watches in stock, so many nice watches, high-end watches, and mid-tier watches as well for those of you that are watch collectors watching this, or those of you that are back to the channel, of course. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe, all that stuff. Instagram, The Real John P. Moving on to the topic, guys. 4 companies here. They control the whole thing. The first one is LVMH, so Louis Vuitton, Moet, Hennessy. Now, the name comes from, the 2 alcohols, Moet, Champagne, and Hennessy, of course, and Louis Vuitton. They control so many luxury brands, and they're really a powerhouse in terms of alcohol producers. Now, by the way, guys, all of these topics, these brands, rather, that I'm going to be speaking about, there's much more that these holding companies actually own, but there's so many I can't talk about them. So here's the main ones. In terms of alcohol, LVMH owns Moet, Veuve, Krug, and Dom. They also own Hennessy, of course, but 4 of those are the leading champagne companies or producers out there. So if you're actually going to the store and you want to buy a nice bottle of champagne or something that you can take with you, you know what the situation is if you drink champagne, but all of the choices are the same corporation, so you're supporting the same investors, the same publicly traded company, by the way. All of these guys in the list, all publicly traded companies from where they're located, all have investors, all have boards, all are chasing profits. So even though there may be a difference in terms of price, they're all seeking the same types of returns and same types of margins. So the quality is going to be there. Of course, we're not comparing brands against each other, but nonetheless, it's all the same people, all the same distribution, all the same stuff. Moving on, they own so many clothing labels. Now, whether it's from luxury to a little more, approachable, they have a wide range, all the way from, something like a Kenzo, which is a little more for, the younger crowd, all the way up until like a Loro Piana, which is very, very fine, cashmere and, nice, walking shoes and things like that, very high end. So they own Dior, Fendi, Givenchy, Kenzo, Louis Vuitton, and Loro Piana, among many others. They're just absolutely powerhouse in terms of clothing, which you don't see in some of the other corporations or companies that we're about to speak about. And in terms of watches, LVMH only has Tag Heuer, Zenith, and Hublot primarily, which is very interesting in my opinion because all 3 of those brands in recent times have kind of traveled along the same trajectory in terms of how they position themselves in the market. They've all positioned themselves to be a little bit nouveau, have that kind of modern style about them, and of course they share the same types of movements as well. So with Tag Heuer, you see it, they've partnered with Alec Monopoly, some other like they have the styling cues of like being vibrant and neon. You see that in Zenith as well, as well as their partnership with Bamford, who puts those things into the watches, and as well as Hublot, who of course has very extravagant flashy neon pieces, sometimes reds and the blues. And I mean, if you're a watch guy, you understand. Certainly these brands are all in the same vein, though of course varying degrees of quality. Moving on to absolutely a powerhouse in the watch industry, Richemont. Now, if you're familiar with watches, Richemont owns, it has to be more than 60 or 70% of the entire industry. Cartier, Van Cleef, A. Lange & Söhne, so very high-end brand, Baume & Mercier, IWC, JLC, Panerai, Piaget, Roger Dubuis, Vacheron, so Holy Trinity, they own part of the Holy Trinity, Dunhill, and Montblanc. Now, when you consider this, you have one corporation owning all of these brands, and all of the brands have their own stories and histories and where they came from, and that's part of the marketing in these watch brands, right? It's all about where the brand came from, you're like one of the, in the old-timey Italian divers for the Panerai, and A. Lange & Söhne, that like traditional German watchmaking, and you have Cartier, that luxury powerhouse in terms of like, jewelry and watches being more of a jewelry and statement and timeless piece, but at the end of the day, they're all the same corporations. And I just think that that's mind-blowing that, this brand, or this corporation rather, Richemont, was founded in 1988. So from just 1988 until now, they've amassed all these brands and others that I didn't mention, and they control arguably the majority, depending on how you look at it, of the wristwatch industry in terms of luxury wristwatches. That to me, that's mind-blowing. And leave in the comments below what you think about that. Did you know this? Did you not know this? But what's even more mind-blowing, or interesting rather, is that recently Richemont purchased Watchfinder. They also purchased Yoox Net-a-Porter, which is a luxury clothing online retail platform, but they purchased Watchfinder. Now, Watchfinder is a pre-owned dealer in Europe and UK, and they're expanding now that they've been purchased. But they're a leading dealer, and they do compete with us at Telluride Watch, and they're a leading dealer, and they sell pre-owned. And what this means is now primary, so the actual manufacturers of all these brands now owns one of the largest distribution channels for pre-owned, so they will be able to entirely control the entire life cycle of that watch. Now, maybe that's the conspiracy theorist in me just kind of jumping to conclusions here, but if you look at the plays that the industry is making, and you see all the other brands that are held by these holding companies, you'll see the pre-owned prices, especially from people like Watchfinder or dealers like Watchfinder, go up because they can ask more because they have access to all the parts for service. They are the brands. Pre-owned is now the brands, and it's the same thing as if you go to like a Mercedes dealership or an Audi dealership. They control the entire life cycle of that car, and of course people pay more because it is the same brand, so you get that kind of sense of feeling. So that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. But rolling on to the third company is Kering. Now, they're really starting to develop brands. They're a little more junior in terms of the brands that they hold, but they have Gucci, Saint Laurent, Bottega, Balenciaga, McQueen, Brioni, and for watches, Ulysse Nardin and Girard-Perregaux. Now, in terms of, by the way, this is a French company. Now, in terms of the other companies that are here, they're a little bit smaller. You can see that it's interesting that, if you're shopping for something luxury like Gucci or Saint Laurent or Bottega, they're owned by the same companies, the same companies, the same investors, the same shareholders. They all want the same thing, and the results all need to be the same or better, which, in my opinion, is just how business is sometimes, especially for large companies like this. Leave in the comments below what you think about this. And lastly, guys, Swatch. Now, I had to save are kind of the best for last, but what Swatch has really done in recent times is they've really made serious plays to control not necessarily all of the brands in the industry, but the production in terms of pieces and parts and components. And that's why you see so many other brands that are not owned by Swatch developing in-house calibers, things that they build themselves and put together with components that are manufactured elsewhere, because they don't want to be controlled by their competitors, right? Swatch owns Breguet, Blancpain, Glashütte, Omega, Rado, Hamilton, and they also own Swatch, of course, like the rubber, and they have some stainless steel watches as well. And what's interesting is they own ETA, so the movements that have been used by all the other brands since essentially the beginning of time, as well as Renata batteries. So the batteries that all these manufacturers are putting into their watches, they own the batteries as well. So they own the movements, the batteries. They have a couple other companies that are in their holdings there that produce other parts of the watch, and the other brands from the other holding companies, they just don't want to put up with having to deal with their competitors' demands, so that's why they created the in-house movement. So I hope that you find all of this incredibly interesting. I know that if I went through this list, I could go on and on for hours about this, because it gets very intricate in terms of their distribution, how they handle AEDs, how they handle stores, closeouts, things like that. And a lot of this is not supposed to be known by you, the consumer. The whole marketing behind luxury brands is the history, what the brand is about, the artisanship, all of that. And when you just narrow it down to these four holding companies, in simplistic terms, it kind of makes it seem like it's not what they say it is. But at the end of the day, they're all very high quality brands, of course. I think as time goes on, you'll see some of the brands that are not watches probably go down in terms of quality just because people are willing to pay for the label. But in watches, so difficult for a brand to kind of pass that off, because as watch guys, we know better, right? We're watch geeks. We watch these videos. You know, we go to delraywatch.com. We do our homework. So I don't think they're going to pull one over on us. And one interesting piece of information is you notice that Rolex is not on this list. And that's right. Rolex is independent. They are controlled kind of by their nonprofit. That's for another video I think I may have actually done already. But check out that video if I've actually done it. If not, I did create it. It just has not been released yet. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Is this a scheme to take over the entire, consumerist mentality here between all these four manufacturers? Do you think that, or corporations rather, do you think that they're going to join forces and create an overlord scenario in luxury? I don't know. Leave in the comments below your theories. I'd love to hear them. And also check me out on Instagram, The Real John P. Thanks for watching, guys. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.